Hello, everyone. This is Jill here to give you the Purdue versus Iowa State post-game recap. Final score being Iowa State 81, Purdue 58. Obviously not the outcome us Boilermakers were hoping for, but there's a lot we can talk about, and there are a few silver linings to this. I'm more of a positive outlook kind of person, so I'll probably talk a little bit more positively than anything. But there are some things that we can talk about as far as why this occurred. First off, the first things that I was thinking about before this game even started was it's a top 10 matchup in Mackey Arena, so you hope that the home court advantage is prevalent, but it's obviously a game played by the players, so they still have to show up and execute on the game plan. The other thing that I was thinking about was if this is going to be a loss in Purdue's books, that we keep it competitive and that we can learn a lot from it. So, one, it wasn't quite competitive at the second half. First half was pretty aggressive and, competitive. But there are a lot of things you can learn from this and hopefully bounce back and respond appropriately. So, to start, you can't win games if you can't shoot. We shot 41% from field and 22% from three. We shot 18 threes and made 2 in the first half and 2 in the second. So that is not a recipe for a winning game. And even more so when the opponent is shooting 40, 50, 60% from field and from three. So really tough game. It was not just a breakdown in our basketball, but it was also an outperformance from Iowa State. So make sure that you give them credit too. I think the first half itself was really competitive. We were forcing turnovers, which was something that we don't typically do, but it led to a really fast transition offense and some quick buckets that kept us in the game. Our offense otherwise was a little quiet just because we weren't shooting very well. And I think we shot 2 of 10 from three from the first half. I think our defense was pretty tough and tight, but Iowa State was still making contested shots, contested threes, and still finding ways to distribute the ball and score and keep it competitive. We weren't able to really get on a streak in the first half. And then, of course, when the second half, when Iowa State led with a streak and shot 4 from three, that kind of led to an overall breakdown in our game plan and our ability to execute anything. So some of the things that kind of broke down in the second half after Iowa State was getting hot, one, we didn't really take care of the basketball. I think we had like 10 turnovers in the second half alone. So, 15 turnovers overall, which is uncharacteristic for Purdue and below average from what Iowa State typically forces from their opponents. Kind of a happy medium, I guess you could say. We didn't turn it over 20 times, but turning it over 15 times, not so great. Obviously, again, like I said before, Iowa State couldn't really miss. Every time we were able to respond with a bucket, they would just come down the court and have a contested shot, go down for them, and just keep them in the game, keeping the lead in front of us. So that was really tough. I think another thing you could tell from our players is that they were starting to get frustrated and flustered with the overwhelming defense and just their inability to get stops on the defensive side for them. Our seniors in particular seemed to be out of the game, very frustrated and unable to, respond like they typically do. So that was a little surprising. And I think you could also tell it trickled down to the rest of the team. If you look at the score, like the box score of the stat sheet, almost none of our players, except for Daniel Jacobson, that was coming off the bench, scored more than 4 points. So that's pretty telling for me. Like, even though our top players weren't performing well, there wasn't a call to respond from our bench players, our underclassmen. A lot of the momentum stems from our seniors, I think, and it just led to our underclassmen, our younger guys, not performing well or being able to execute when someone else wasn't able to either. This game was more mental than anything, in my opinion. I think you could just tell all the energy was just gone after a certain point. And I would say another thing, we shot 43% from the free throw line. While we weren't going to win this game by making our free throws, it's important that we do in case that is something that comes up moving forward. So anything under 50% is obviously not great. And I think the expectation moving forward is, even if we're having a bad day, these are free like shots we're getting. Let's make them and let's get a rhythm going. You just need to see the ball go through the net, and sometimes that is going to be like the biggest tell for our players. There are some silver linings to this game and opportunities moving forward to respond. One, we did out rebound Iowa State 33-28, very marginal out rebounding there, but it is nice to see that our presence on the glass is still there, even in games where we're not winning. So I think it's important that we keep that up and still find ways to get the ball, get a second chance shot, something like get a stop on the defensive end. That's just going to be important moving forward. And like I've said in the past, don't take them for granted. I would also expect that this team responds loudly moving forward from this loss. It is a top 10 matchup, and the fact that we lost to Iowa State is not necessarily a bad thing because you can tell this is a team that's going deep in March. But it is something that when you are at home and you are the number one team in the country, you don't expect them to lose by this much. So I think our players are competitive enough and understand what's expected of this team or what their goals are, and if they really want to make good on their goals, then they need to respond very clearly and loudly that we're not going anywhere. So that's what I'm expecting for the next game and the rest of the year, but it's going to be important that we respond well. I would also say that bad losses in December, tough games in the non-conference season, they lead to lessons learned in March. So while it is hard to take such a big loss here, it's really early in the season. Our main goal is going to be the March Madness, and we need to be able to keep focus on that and learn from all of our mistakes, our losses, turn them into opportunities to just get better. It's not unusual for us to have a bad loss like this early in the season. And while it isn't great to sit here and take it, I think there's a lot to learn from this. And this isn't a defense or this isn't a type of basketball play that we won't expect moving forward. So let's make sure that we can find a way to keep creating and generating opportunities for us, even if we're not shooting well or maybe the other team has a streak going. So let's just find ways to respond and learn. The other thing I'll say too is that an 8-game win streak to start the season is very great. Doesn't happen a lot, and I don't even think it happened when we went to the national championship game in 2024. This was a bad loss, but it was a bad loss to a really, really good team. So you can't win them all, but let's make sure we win the important ones moving forward. And then if you want to talk about key players, I don't think Braden Smith had a great game, but he did have some good highlights as far as, having 8 assists. He had 11 points. He did have 5 rebounds too. Oscar Clough had 10 points. Daniel Jacobson also had 10 points. Really was able to feed the big men, which was great. And I think we need to go back to our roots, find some more opportunities to just get the ball in the paint. I think we go to TKR a lot, and they know that he's an All-American. So they're just doubling him up. We need to make it a problem for them to double on TKR and see Clough and Jacobson and Benter at times as, an offensive threat too. CJ Cox had 7 points. I think that's always great to see him score and be productive on the offensive end. And I think he's one of those players that seemed unfazed. I could be wrong. I started to zone out at the end, but he seemed a little unfazed by the performance of our team and was still just trying to play hard and find a way to be productive for Purdue. So I liked his energy and his play. I would say some highlights that are maybe not so positive would be TKR and Fletcher Lawyer scored less than 10 points combined. So that's not great to see. And to have one have an off day is fine, but to have both, not ideal. And they are such key players for our team, not just because of their high scoring ability, but because they are like team leaders and they manage the court presence that we have. So I just hope moving forward they're able to find a way to still be aggressive and not let their emotions take over some of their game. I think we could ramble here for a while and talk about all the bad things that happened today, but I think what really matters is just how you respond. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think any post-game recap, comments on Twitter and elsewhere, you'll find that you'll hear a lot of the same things. I'm not saying anything that's different, but I am hopeful that we move forward with a really good response. And our next game is against Minnesota back in Mackey Arena. I think it's on Wednesday. So let's come out that game really strong, show our presence, and it's okay to have off nights, but let's not make that a norm. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching this video. Again, not the outcome we were hoping for, but I think there's opportunity for better things ahead of us. So let's keep our heads up and keep looking forward. So thanks for watching this again, and I'll see you in the next one.